Hello and welcome to the British Dapper, and today we're talking about 5 life lessons that you should know before you're 30. So today's video is inspired by one of my subscribers that raised the question to me, what would be my 5 life lessons I should have known before I was 30, or what I feel I should have known by the time I was 30. And this has made me reflect on my own life over the years, and thinking back all those years, what really, if any, were things that I should have known when I was in my 20s, going in my 30s, that would have really enhanced my life later in life. And so today I'm talking about 5 key areas. I may well throw in a couple of little bonus ones at the end of this video. So 2 little life skills that might actually add on top of those 5. But stay tuned at the end of the video to find out those 2 extra ones. But getting back to the 5 main things that I feel I should have known or would want to have known before I was 30 are basically things that some of them I already knew before I was 30. Some have only come to fruition over years of wishing I'd known that earlier, and also witnessing other people. For example, my son's now 27 years of age, so I'm interested in the way he leads his life, and not only him, but also other youths in this day and age. So, the first thing I would say is embrace failure. It's an area for growth. By 30, you've likely encountered setbacks in your career, relationships, or personal goals. Rather than fear failure, learn to see it as an opportunity to grow. Each failure provides a lesson to make you more resilient, wise, and adaptable. And so when it comes to these little setbacks in life, now there are minor ones and there are major ones. But generally, the major ones, the contributing factor is that there are a series of small events before it that, if you'd have taken the time to address those small details, would have potentially resulted in the main problem not even occurring. So I suppose you could argue attention to detail falls into this category. But when we do make a mistake, the issue is, how do we learn from it? So sometimes I have a diary or a journal, and I'll jot down things that didn't go so well that week. And then I'll analyze those things individually and break down why that wasn't as successful as I thought. And is there anything that I can do differently in the future to prevent that happening again? Because unfortunately, humans are creatures of habit. And so sometimes we need a lot of failures in our life before we get the message, as it were. But if you can get ahead of the game and realize that, oh, this happened because I did X, Y, and Z, and if I did this instead, I wouldn't have had that problem, then there's something to be learned from that failure. The problem's going to be when you fail and continually fail and you don't acknowledge your participation in that failure. So it's critical that you look at yourself and what you've done to cause this issue. It's very easy to blame everybody else for that failure, but at the end of the day, you've also participated or added to that failure in some way or another. So self-analyzation is a key part of learning from lessons, especially if they're failures. The person that has never failed at doing something has never really tested himself, or is completely oblivious to the failures. So we all make mistakes. Making mistakes is not in itself such a bad thing, but it's learning from those mistakes and learning how to prevent them happening in the future that really does make you a better person for it in the long run, and much more knowledgeable about how you're going to deal with things in the future. So something else I just wanted to touch on is that even if you're not making a mistake at the moment, you might be aware of other people making failures or making mistakes, and you can learn from them as well. So if they've made a mistake, question, would you have done the same thing? And what would you have done differently if it were you in that situation? And that makes you a wise person and somebody that reflects not only on your behaviors and your actions, but also that of others. And maybe when you're dealing with those relationships with people, sometimes some people will listen to advice, some people won't. And that is a skill in its own right that you could learn through practice and observation as well. And sometimes that new skill can open up a whole world to you. So embrace failure. There's a lot that can be learned from failure. So the second thing is investing in your health earlier. So we're not just talking about physical health, but also mental health as well. And nutrition comes into that as well, looking after your body. So in your younger years, in your 20s, yeah, you might well feel that you're invincible. And you may well feel that up until you're 40. But the problem is, in your 20s to your 30s is really your foundation years, if you like. So whilst you might be ultra fit, by the time you get to 30, you might have to change your lifestyle. You might start thinking about having children, a family. You might have other commitments, more work commitments, and less leisure time. All these things have an impact on your health, not just your physical, but also your mental. And when you're grabbing something to eat at lunchtime, you're grabbing those convenient foods. So your nutrition's not necessarily great either. So these things are all going to be laid out in front of you over the years. But if you can get in your 20s and into your 30s into a good routine and a sustainable routine of not only going to do exercise, but also the type of foods you eat and also your mental health and what you do to make yourself feel good about yourself, those hobbies and activities, for example, then if you can sustain them for the rest of your life, you're going to be a much healthier person for it and live longer. Let's be honest about it. So when you're walking down that high street, I'm not saying you're looking down at anybody, but you look around you and see how many people are in their 20s and 30s, maybe up into their 50s, and they're grossly obese. Now, there can be a number of reasons for them being in that situation. It could be health issues that prevent them from exercising, it could be bad diet, it could be a number of things. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, I'm just saying chances are they're not going to live as long as somebody that's fit, healthy, and sprightly. I would suggest regular, small amounts of exercise. Something that you can sustain in 20, 30, or 50 years' time, as an example, is better than 10 years of hard exercise and then nothing for 40. So just bear that in mind. Maybe think about the exercise you do. And running's very hard on the joints potentially. So sometimes as you get older, you might have to diversify your exercise from running to maybe swimming a bit or maybe introduce cycling as an alternative. Your general overall body might benefit from circuit training rather than weight training, as in bodybuilding. But each to their own. If you want to do bodybuilding, that's great. But there are impacts on your body from doing that type of activity over long periods of time. Muscle strains, tears, damage to joints is not uncommon when you're really pushing it all the time. So diversifying your exercise is always a wise thing to do. But try and pick the level of activity you do that you can sustain over long periods of time and can still be accommodated with changes in your lifestyle. For example, as you get older, you might have children, you might have family commitments, you might have elderly parents you've got to look after and care for. All these things have an impact on your social life and your exercise life. But something's better than nothing, even if it's just going out every morning for a 30-minute walk, brisk pace, or maybe going for a swim once or twice a week in addition to that walking. Maybe doing a little bit of circuit training, yoga, and things like that is all going to be good for you in the long run. So, nutrition is really a very difficult area for most people. And nutrition, whilst you might be doing all this exercise, you can eat a lot of food and you can burn it off because the exercise level is burning off those calories and you maintain a good weight. But when you have that injury or you have some other problem where you can't exercise, then the trick is to be able to moderate and bring down your level of food intake. And that brings me on to the final thing about mental health. Now, mental health is something that, whilst you're in your 20s, maybe you're in a good place. But when you get into 30s, there's a lot of stresses in life. For example, you might have to buy a house. You might have to find accommodation for you, for a wife, a partner. You might have children. You might have financial burdens because of that situation of having a family. That can affect you. And if you're stressed through work and the daily grind of trying to get a wage for your family, it could be your children are ill. That all can impact on your health. If you are feeling a little bit down, a bit blue, a bit depressed, or feeling a little bit lonely, then as soon as you start feeling that way, where life's not really giving you full enjoyment or not as you used to experience it, maybe it's time to start asking somebody for help. Maybe speaking to your GP, maybe a close family friend, or even your partner. Expressing your situation to people is not a sign of weakness. It's good prevention. So if you're not in a good place, chances are it's only going to get worse over time unless something's done to change it. So investing in self-care is something I'd suggest is having those hobbies, those activities that really lifts you. So it could be, for example, taking on a new hobby or a new activity. It does help with loneliness because you can meet other people, like-minded people potentially, and it opens you up to a whole new set of skills and experiences. And so number 3 is cultivating financial discipline. Managing your finances well is essential for financial freedom. Learning to save, invest, and live within your means before you're 30 sets a solid foundation for the future. Avoid accumulating unnecessary debt and prioritize building an emergency fund. So everybody from time to time will have peaks and troughs in their financial situations. It could be that you're in and out of employment. So sometimes you've got a lot of money available to you, sometimes you've got less. Now, your life can be up and down and very turbulent. But if you draw a line right through the middle of that, and for example, we're talking about when you're on a high, put some money aside. So when you go into that trough, it flattens it out, less stressful. And that comes down to two things, short-term and long-term investments. So short-term investments might be just where you need a sudden injection of finances. For example, it might be the washing machine needs replacing, it could be a car needs to be repaired, or that vet bill that could be £400-500. So that sort of money is not easy necessarily to find if you're spending your salary every month. So straight away, you're going to have to set money aside. Now, if you build up a reserve, if you like, an emergency fund over time, then when that unexpected bill comes in, you can cover it. When it comes to setting money aside, think about not just now, but 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, retirement. Now, retirement's a big thing. When you're in your youth, you are invincible. You don't even think about what's going to be like in 40 years' time, 50 years' time. That doesn't even appear on your radar. But the critical thing is, by the time you get to your 50s and 60s, it's very much too late to put any money aside to make any significance in your retirement. And if you're reliant on state pension or what little pension you have got saved up in private schemes, you're going to be very disappointed that you're retiring at an age where you can still physically do things and want to do things, but you can't actually do that because of the financial implications of it, not having the funds to do it. Wanting to go away on holiday, wanting to go on that lifetime cruise with your wife in retirement. Those things don't happen because you haven't got the money. The amount of people I've seen in my life that have worked hard all their lives and have spent the money as it's come in, they've spent it, at the end of the month, they have nothing to show for it. 40 years down the line, when they do need additional money, their income is halved, if not more, and they still want to have that old lifestyle, and it doesn't work. So number 4 is nurturing meaningful relationships. Friendships and connections evolve in your 20s, but by the time you're 30, you'll recognize the value of quality over quantity. And what we mean by that is that school friends that are still there now in your late 20s, 30s, those people that you can have regular contact with, yeah, they don't just happen. You've got to cultivate them, you've got to nurture them, you've got to invest in them. So those friendships that you have, rather than have a lot of friends that are, let's be honest, insignificant in some respects because they are just token friends, they're offset by those quality relationships with friends that you've known for years, that you invest in and they invest in you. You support each other. Your support network is maybe that school friend that you've known for 20 odd years who's still there for you when the crap hits the fan, or you're there for them. There is that relationship that's toxic potentially as well, and that's always going to be awkward, isn't it? Because sometimes, although that's toxic, it's difficult to say enough's enough and walk away from that relationship or that friendship. But you've got to think about your well-being, and you need to step back and judge, do you still want to put up with that behavior? Because a lot of the time their behaviors is there to control or influence you, and that's why potentially they're quite toxic. So if you're in that sort of relationship, whether that be a work relationship or a relationship with a partner, then consider, do you really want to put yourself through this over a long period of time? It can be very damaging, not only to you, but also to them potentially, where you constantly get this clash of personality. So seriously consider that relationship if you've got that sort of toxic or challenging relationship with somebody. So number 5 is live authentically and set your own standards. So it's very easy to be misinfluenced, if you like, by people that say, oh, you've got to be bad, you've got to really put over this image that you're hard. Well, to be honest with you, that's not the case. You need to set your own standards though. What is your level of performance? For example, with myself, I deal with dressing well and influencing other people, and I always try and do it in a gentlemanly way. I put myself over as a general normal person, and I put my subject over in a way that I hope others can relate to. I don't try and look down on people or make it appear that I'm greater than anybody else. In fact, there are many people that are much more eloquent and experienced than myself, but are considered quite arrogant in the way they put their subject over. Do you want to be somebody like that? It's good to have your own standards, your own expectations, and live to them. They've got to be achievable goals and standards that you set yourself. And it might need education to actually change your performance, change the way you behave, nurture new change. Education is a great way of advancing yourself over time. So reading, studying up on new subjects is all good for you. It helps you set those standards, moderate your own behaviors, and become potentially a better person from it. So what I would say is don't expect external validation. If you're striving to get validation all the time, then there's something quite wrong about that. So all I'm suggesting is just be yourself. Be authentic when you're talking to people. Be genuine. Don't say what you think they want to hear. Say what you want to say, what you want to express, what your feelings, your views are. But do it in a way that is not confrontational. So there are my 5 life lessons that if I didn't know, I'd want to know before I was 30. So I mentioned at the beginning about 2 other life lessons that in my case I already knew and learnt, and my son has learnt those skills as well. And that is, the first one is learn how to iron. Ironing things is a skill, and it really does make the difference between somebody wearing nice clothes scruffily and nice clothes really well. The other skill I'm going to talk about, believe it or not, is the manly art of needlework. And when I mean needlework, I don't mean tattoos. What I mean is sewing. So 2 valuable lessons there. Learn how to iron, learn how to sew. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to subscribe, then please feel free to do so. We have a Buy Me a Coffee page, so if you'd like to make a contribution to the channel, then please feel free to do so. We also love constructive comments, so if you'd like to make some, jot them down below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And if you've got a question you'd like to pose to us or you'd like an answer to, then why not jot it down? We'll try and answer your question for you. We also like ideas for future videos, so if you want to make a contribution and make a suggestion about future content, then please, again, jot it in the notes below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. The next video could be something that you've recommended or suggested. So until next time, take care.